This is Kristine Smith reading from a story entitled Nest. Nest was a story I wrote after taking Master Gardener courses at Chicago Botanic Garden, where I learned all sorts of things about how nature tries to kill us. Planet M17 CBA, Southern Hemisphere, Central Sector, Northwest Quadrant, location LGD 17044. It's beautiful here. Group lead Lila Destry looked up from their tablet and surveyed the scene. I watched all the official videos, but still, I didn't expect it. Gwen Escobar joined them at the edge of a grassy ravine lined along both sides with trees that resembled bur oaks if you didn't examine the leaves and bark too closely. The report stated Earthscape Level 5 suitable for test settlement. That could have meant anything from desert hellhole to perpetual flood zone. Tomas Bell looked over from his examination of the first of 6 crates of building materials and other supplies. You know, Corp, they say whatever it takes to get you to sign up. You don't find out the truth until you land. By that time, they've locked up your stake money and started the penalty clock ticking. He pulled his filter mask away from his nose and sniffed. Air isn't bad. At least they were right about that. Lila tapped the mask that covered the lower half of their face with the tip of their stylus. There's a haziness to it. The upper half, with its furrowed brow and bloodshot eyes, displayed all the worry that came from the task of building a settlement team with 4 other people who'd been chosen by lottery and met for the first time a week before departure. Keep the filters running until we know what it is. Tree pollen, judging from the fringe hanging off some of these trees. Tomas picked off a bit of said fringe that had fallen onto one of the crates, then flicked the end with a finger and watched a puff of fine particles drift off with the light breeze. Great. Sona Patel twisted her rope of black hair around her head and secured it with a stretchy cloth band. Now I can add allergies to the humidity and the chafing from this suit. She pulled at the waist of the shapeless tan coverall, the front pocket patch of which bore her last name, partially enclosed by the corpse C. Gwen tugged at her own suit in sympathy. Even with the fake silk underwear, the rough cloth irritated all the wrong places. There's cornstarch in the kitchen supplies. That helps. A shadow fell across her tablet, and she looked up to find Tomas standing over her. So tall, with tired brown eyes and lank blonde hair already darkened with sweat. Hey, Notes, I need the codes to open the crates. Sure. Gwen pulled up the necessary file, then flicked it over to Tomas' device. She had signed on as general technical support, which covered everything from systems setup and maintenance to handling the compost bins. But over the course of the 2-week transit from the training facility, she had acquired the unofficial title of person to go to for stuff. Except for Tomas. His nickname for her was the Note Taker, which he'd shortened to Notes over time. Take care, Gwen, he told her the first time he saw her recording in her tablet. Corp doesn't like people who keep a record. After Tomas returned to the crates, Gwen sought refuge in a nearby patch of shade. The scene reminded her of photos of Earth, the woodland and rolling hills visible through the trees, so different from the domed station settlements in which she'd grown up. But the heat. The air should have been cool and crisp, but not still and heavy. They had sat down only an hour ago, and she could already feel her hair frizz, imagined it exploding like black dandelion fluff around her face. Not that she cared what she looked like. Keep head down, do job, go home. Hopefully with a healthy exploratory bonus to add to whatever interest her stake accrued. Lila unloaded the last of the equipment, the medical and fire safety gear, from the shuttle that had transported them to the site. After setting the craft on standby, they walked along the line of crates, patting each as they passed. According to the Bible, we have 7-hour equivalents to assemble the domicile before sunshade. That's like dusk, right? Sona had dug out measurement equipment and begun marking the outline of the buildings that would serve as their laboratory and living quarters. The sun's never really set here, so we'd be able to see, with or without lighting. And the critters will be able to see us. Tomas opened the first crate and slid out pre-made wall panels, followed by the freestanding fabricator. The bat-like things and the cat-like things and that bag of blob that ingests food through its skin. That blob is 2,000 keys west of here, in the ocean. Sona edged a marker one way, then the other, with the toe of her boot, then stood back and surveyed the result like an artist assessing the latest brushstroke. This place has had, 100 years to settle down since Corp scaped it? That's a drop in the bucket in planet time. Tomas entered the startup code into the fabricator's touchscreen, and green light skittered across the device's surface. What we're seeing now is a veneer. The soil is still dodgy, the air is just breathable, and none of the flora or fauna can be considered edible. Sona rolled her eyes. You're just a barrel of fun, you are. I tell it like it is. We'll be living inside a soap bubble for the next 3 months. If it pops, Corp will use it as an excuse to cancel any earned bonuses and keep our stakes to help cover their losses. Families won't see a credit. You know, I thought I was the most cynical person I knew until I met you. Sona kicked another marker into position. If this is such a lost cause, why are you here? Tomas spun to face her. You know damned well why. Gwyn focused on her tablet with the occasional sidelong glance at Lila, whose narrowed eyes held the realization of a day's work still to do and 2 of the 5 people who had to do it already sniping at one another. They took a deep breath and were about to step in when Sona held up her hands in apology, and Tomas muttered under his breath and resumed setting up the fabricator. Sona set another marker in place, then joined Gwyn in the shade. Refresh my memory. She bent close and pretended interest in the plans showing on Gwyn's tablet display. His wife left their domicile on the Mars 7 settlement and took their kids back to Earth. He's on the hook for child support plus repayment of the Martian stake. Gwyn paused as Sona activated her own handheld. He's in deep. Sona grabbed building plans off Gwyn's tablet, then paused. Why are you here? Taking a year off from uni. Looks good on the resume. Gwyn shrugged. And sometimes you just need a change. Uh-huh. What was their name? Gwyn almost didn't answer. Then she met Sona's eye and saw nothing of the woman's usual cutting coolness. Aiden? She shook her head. He's not the only reason. I just needed to get away and do something different. Parents? Sona waited for her to nod. Yeah. Her look hardened for a moment. Then she patted Gwyn's arm and returned to the framing. Lila stood in the middle of the work area, hands on hips, and sighed. Has anyone seen Mr. Zielinski? I saw him head into the woods while we were unloading the crates. Tomas waved toward a spot that looked vaguely like a path, then pulled a printout from the fabricator and unsnapped the first in a series of wall fasteners. Nature called, I guess. He's not supposed to. Lila pointed to the 3rd crate, then to Gwyn. The toilet has priority. Gwyn, go get Peter and tell him that his presence is required forthwith. Gwyn sagged against a tree, then jerked upright as sharp bark poked through her coverall like needles. Why do I have to go after him? Because you were the only one who didn't want to kill him when he kept us overtime in class with his 90 million questions. Tomas made a shooing motion at her. This makes you his designated best friend. Gwyn stashed her tablet in the leg pocket of her coverall and trudged into the woods. The air felt even more oppressive there, the humidity combined with the dampness rising off layers of fallen leaves and other forest detritus. Animal sounds, tweets and clucks and buzzing, silenced as she approached, then resumed as she passed. Every few steps she glanced back to make sure she could still see the camp. When low branches hid it from sight, she stopped, wiped the sweat from her face with her sleeve. Peter! I'm here. Gwyn pushed through low foliage in the direction of the voice and spotted Peter Zielinski kneeling beside a fallen tree. Lila's asking for you. Tomas and Sona have started setting up the domicile, and we really need to get to work. Peter looked up, one hand resting on the trunk, which was decayed and partially hollowed. He was the youngest member of the team, barely out of his teens, with a face like everyone's little brother and irritating habits to match. One of the cat critters is inside. We're not supposed to. It's dead. Gwyn crouched by the opening and looked inside the hollow. At the far end of the space lay a weasel-like creature, dull gray with a vaguely feline face and fluffy tail. What happened to it? Just its time, I guess. Peter pointed to one of the jagged red wounds that ran along the creature's side. Looks like it was hurt. They said in class that they're really territorial. It looks sick to me. I can count its ribs. It's so thin. Gwyn sniffed, then scooted back. Really smells. Yeah, I know. Peter waved away one of the insects that fluttered out of the hollow and around his head. I was excited at first. It's their breeding season, and I thought it was a female with pups. That was a guess, you know. They don't know that much about the animals around here. Gwyn stood and looked around. The woods had gone quiet again, the silence as heavy as the air. We need to head back. She waited for Peter to stand, then backed away as he continued to brush bugs away from his head and neck. Maybe you should have used some repellent. It makes me sneeze. He followed her through the foliage. I wanted to find what made this. He kicked at the path, which, while narrow, had obviously been there some time. It must be big, maybe like deer. Or small, and there are a lot of them. Gwyn picked up the pace. I think we should set up shelter and guardian zones before we introduce ourselves to the wildlife, don't you think? They walked in silence for a time. Then Peter cleared his throat. Animals are easier than people. If you say so. Gwyn felt her mood lighten when she heard the voices of the others. She didn't dislike Peter. She just felt he was too young to be part of a first settlement team. And this is me saying that. He was only a few years younger, but it made her feel so old, so aggravated. When they entered the clearing, she had to stop herself from pushing him in Lila's direction. After a few false starts, they settled into a system. Tomas, Peter, and Lila assembled the building components with the aid of hand grapples and portable winches, while Sona fabricated parts, and Gwyn kept track of all the pieces to make sure nothing important got left out. What seemed at first like an impossible task moved along slowly but steadily, with only a few moments of bickering when Sona printed an entire wall's worth of fasteners with incorrectly spaced holes. Those are the directions she gave me. She pointed to Gwyn, then gave her better your ass than mine shrug. This is pre-drilled for an 8-person domicile. Tomas held up one of the pieces connecting a portion of the eaves to the main body of the building. The holes won't match up. We can't afford to waste those parts. Lila pressed their hand to the back of their neck and closed their eyes. The monomer is allotted by the milliliter. If we run out, we won't have anything left to make repairs. So Tomos and Sana figured out a way to drill holes by hand while Gwyn dug out the correct set of specs. By the time they resumed building, everyone had begun talking to one another again. Floor, outer walls, inner walls constructed from the broken down crates, plumbing and air handling assemblies, built-in furnishings, beds, cabinets, appliances, a building by number kit, finely honed, just enough and no more. It's not perfect, but it's pretty solid. Tomas patted the entryway door frame, then stuck a finger in one of the exposed extra holes that ran along the underside of the eave. Call it a soffit vent and call it a day. He walked out to the center of the clearing and looked up at the darkening sky. I can see a couple of stars. I know there's a moon, but I'm not sure when it shows up. Not for 4 days, Peter spoke with authority. He had quizzed one of the instructors for a half hour about the moon's phases, while the rest of them had marked time on their handhelds and dreamed of lunch. I say we've done one hell of a day's work, folks. Lila sent a message to the nearest corp beacon that they had completed the domicile build. Time for dinner. They collected their gear and entered their new home, chose bedrooms, took their turns in the shower. Refreshed and relaxed, they assembled dinner in the kitchen and ate together at one of the work tables. By the end of the meal, even Tomas smiled. "Wait here." Lila repaired to their bedroom, returning within moments with a small duffel that they set on the table with a flourish. "This is only for special occasions, folks." They removed a bottle labeled touchscreen cleaner from the bag, then followed with some small glasses. Officially, alcohol isn't allowed on Corp property. They popped open the bottle and filled the glasses with amber liquid, which they passed around the table. But I know for a fact that management has no objection to the odd indulgence in one of the finer varieties of scotch. "Hear that, Notes? Make sure you get that part down." Tomas shook a finger at Gwen, who stuck out her tongue in reply. "Here's to settlement LGD 17044. Lila raised their glass, then clinked it with each of the others in turn. "May the going be smooth and the payouts plentiful." They all drank, refilled, and went outside to find the sky had darkened further, revealing more stars. During that time, Corp activated the shuttle homing beacon, and they watched as their sole means of getting off-world rose and drifted upward, safety lights blinking, growing smaller and smaller, until it faded into the gloom. And you can get Nest in a book called Nature's Ways from Bookview Cafe. And thank you for listening.